can do the sliders over here as well. Tammy, do the sliders, yeah, cool. Tonight we go dark. I invite you to just find yourself in this moment. Maybe you close your eyes. Perhaps you put your hand on your chest just to find your heartbeat. Just take this moment to ground yourself in your body and your heartbeat. The season of Advent leads us through the dark of the season to the birth of Jesus, Jesus of Nazareth, but we're not there yet. Tonight, Mary is still pregnant. She's been traveling for days. She's been riding a donkey, heavy with her load. Her back is sore. Her body terribly uncomfortable. She has a baby growing inside of her, and soon her body will open, and another human being will come out of it, which is a miracle just on its own. He will come out into the light, but he's not here yet. He is still in the dark, the warm and safe dark, listening to his mother's heartbeat. Many of us do not associate the dark with warmth and safety. Many of us are afraid of the dark. We try to avoid it. We think it is something that we must endure, something that we must resist. We associate the dark with pain and suffering. We fear what lives in the shadows of our minds. We are drawn to bright lights, to busy lives, to anything that distracts us from what we imagine might be laying in the dark. As a nation, we have become addicted to living in the light, literally addicted. The United States uses 80% of the world's painkillers. We are hopped up on pills, hoping that we don't feel anything. And I don't believe it's because we have more physical ailments or because we have more money. We have become addicted because we are a nation in pain, spiritual pain. But instead of trying to deal with our suffering, with our discomfort, we try to cover it up. We try to numb ourselves out. We pretend that everything is fine. Well, the house is on fire. Exploring the dark means letting go. It means surrender. And perhaps we're worried what will happen if we release ourselves into the darkness. We worry that we may be lost, that we may dissolve into nothingness. But there is a richness in the dark, perhaps frightening in its richness. The dark defies meaning and boundary. It is mystery. It asks for trust and vulnerability, and these are not always easy for us. But it is in the dark where we can be reborn. The sacredness of the dark. So tonight, let us be guided by the wisdom of Wendell Berry. To go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark without sight. And find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. Our spiritual origin rests in this silent mystery. We cannot know the divine until we are ready to say yes to the dark. It is in the dark soil that the seed first begins to sprout. It is in the dark womb that the child is created, and it is in the dark mystery that we release our ideas of God, our ideas of ourselves in relationship to God, and allow ourselves just to become. Tomorrow, Jesus will come out into the light, but tonight, we are with Mary, and she is pregnant, and she is carrying a child in her womb. She was called by angels for this sacred responsibility. She defied convention. She has endured the withering looks of those who disapprove of her path. She has traveled so far. She has traveled so long to this night. Her body aches to bring the child into the womb. Her body aches to fulfill her sacred responsibility, the charge given to her by angels to grow God in her womb. $14 billion years ago, there was a burst of energy, and the Christ came out into the light. The cosmic womb gave birth to all that we would become. It gave birth to the hydrogen and the helium and the carbon and the iron and the dirt and the sand of the desert and the donkey and the woman who rides atop it. The Christ has traveled so far, but now it sits next to you, sentient, alive, curious, afraid, a heart beating in its chest, a body pregnant with sacred responsibility. Can you see the Christ sitting next to you? The cosmic Christ has been with us for billions of years. It fills the universe with the love of all that is. It is the divine essence. God is revealed in everything. But as humans, we often have a hard time recognizing the sacred beauty and the redemption in the Christ that is all around us. So the responsibility was given to Mary by angels to birth the Christ in human form, so we might fall in love with it. Jesus became the Christ in human form. Christ is not his last name. Christ is the name for all that is. Jesus comes to help us see the Christ in the person next to us. And perhaps if we can see the Christ in the person next to us, we will be able to recognize the Christ in all things. The Christ that has been with us for billions of years. The Christ that has been born and reborn, that comes from the darkness of the womb into the light only to create a new womb, so creation might be reborn again and again. Paul, writing in Romans, says, "For we know that all creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time." I'm a Unitarian Universalist. I believe that revelation is continuous, that we are part of the mystic tradition that understands the importance of the birth of a child named Jesus, not for his historical relevance, but rather as an opportunity to understand the Christ as it became flesh. It is an opportunity to see, to witness, to fall in love with the Christ all around us, with the Christ that is sitting next to you at this very moment, this intimate moment that is within us. The world is not profane. Nothing is merely natural. All of it is sacred. Everything is the incarnation. Right? It went from a photon of light to a living, breathing thing next to you. That's miraculous. You have the entirety of the cosmos within you. And tonight we are being asked not only to witness to this, but to participate, to find our role both as someone who is ready to birth and as someone who is ready to midwife the sacred. Just as we are part of the Christ, just as the Christ is within us, so is the Divine Mother. Tonight we are with Mary. Within us lives the warm darkness of the sacred womb from which God will be born. And I don't have a physical womb, the kind that gives birth to human beings, but I do have a spiritual womb, and I have been called by angels. I've been called by angels to fulfill a sacred responsibility, to give birth to God. And each of you has a spiritual womb. Each of you has been called by angels to fulfill a sacred responsibility, to give birth to God. And this congregation, this gathering of people, also has a spiritual womb. This congregation has been called by angels to fulfill a sacred responsibility, to give birth to God. And that's a little bit abstract. I get it, right? You might be asking, what does this mean, to give birth to God? What does that even look like? And that's a fair question, because as human beings, we often take things very literally. When talking about the coming of the Christ, there are people who believe that the same child who was born this night some 2,000 years ago is coming back. And they speak of a literal rebirth of a child named Jesus. And I am more inclined to believe in a vision shared by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who spoke of the coming of the Christ. It might surprise you, but Thich Nhat Hanh had a picture of Jesus on his altar right next to the Buddha, because he believed in the coming of the Christ. And he would say that the coming of the Christ is not going to appear as a single person, but as a great awakening by millions of people who have fallen in love with creation, who have come to see the suffering that is all around us, the loneliness, the isolation, the alienation, the sadness that drives us into destructive patterns of selfishness, greed, and nihilism. The coming of the Christ is not going to be a single person, but an awakened people committed to sitting with this nation in pain, a nation trying to numb itself out, a nation addicted to distraction, not in the pursuit of pleasure, but in the pursuit of checking out. I believe in an awakened people, called by the whispers of angels, called to be healers of the sick and the hungry, called to sit with the stranger and those in prison, called to clothe the naked and comfort the lonely. To give birth to God means that we are committing ourselves to falling in love with this creation, to dive into the sacred and rich darkness that is our connection to the cosmos, and to bring forth treasures of hope and healing as an awakened people. You are part of this mystic tradition that lives with the incarnation not as a historical event, but one that is birthed over and over and over again because you bring the divine into being so that we might fall in love with it over and over and over again. The continuous revelation of the sacred encounter. Tonight in the dark, we are with Mary. She is sore. Her back is tired. She has traveled a long way to fulfill her sacred responsibility. But soon the Christ will be born. The world is depending on it. Birthing the divine is not easy. Riding the donkey on your long journey as you attempt to fulfill your sacred responsibility is not easy. Your body will ache. You will be sore. There will be times when you will feel alone and afraid because you have forgotten the Christ that is sitting next to you, all around you, intimately. But there is a way back. You can touch your heart. You can rest your hand on your chest and breathe. Connect with the heartbeat that is both yours and the entire universe's. The incarnation is all around you. May we find hope in the groans of creation. As we give birth to God together, this congregation was called to bring hope to the world. May we take up our sacred roles, both as mother and as midwife, as we proclaim the possibility of a new creation. Amen.